Welcome to another Wednesday Yachting Luncheon. We look out at the beautiful view over San Francisco Bay here from the St. Franny. It's fun to see everyone here. Let's say a little bit about future speakers. Well, way out in September of this year, we'll have Daniel Forrester travel out from the East Coast to give us his view on international yacht racing, the beauty of his sport. He'll be here for the Big Boat Series, and he's a renowned, great photographer. I can tell you when he and I worked for Bill Koch back in the 90s, his shots were like, they were showstoppers. In June, we'll have Michael Ellis, the naturalist. He'll be here to talk all about the mysteries of the Mojave, once a lake, now the deepest desert in the world. And then Bob Devlin will be here to talk about auto racing in Golden Gate Park and along the Marina Green. Imagine a Grand Prix race along the Marina Green. That happened. He'll be here to talk about it. In May, Ron Holland, the famed naval architect, will be here to talk about his new book, All the Oceans, and designing by the seat of my pants, as he puts it. And Steve Tashia, chairman of the America's Cup Hall of Fame Selection Committee, he'll be here to talk all about the America's Cup and the process of the Hall of Fame Selection Committee. In March, Jocelyn Nash, that is to say the 89-year-old racing champion, she who won the Mallory Cup back in the early 60s with one member present, our Jimmy DeWitt. Jimmy over here. Let's give one round for Jimmy. And his then protege, Jocelyn. She'll be here to talk about a career and a world of yacht racing. Also in March, we'll have Philip Eliasov out from Connecticut. He's a college professor out there who talk all about Winslow Homer and his nautical art and man versus the sea and how Winslow Homer depicted American heroes early. And next week at this podium, we will have Dave Holscher. He is an offshore swimmer, and he will talk about swimming from Catalina to California. How many people have done that? As I thought. A couple of times. Bruce has done it at least twice. A little bit about our speaker today. Now, we get speaker suggestions from everywhere, but no better than from our own group here. And so one John Harrington deserves our applause. Johnny. Thank you, John. Longtime member and librarian of the St. Francis Yacht Club, proposed this talk to us months ago, half a year ago, in fact. And so we're grateful, John, for your good suggestion, this one among many. Now, this is going to be an unusual talk because the artist is in New Zealand, and so we're going to do a live interview of him a little bit on Skype, so you'll see him on the big screen. But to talk about him and to set the stage, we have two international authorities on art. First, Karen Beale. First mentioned Karen Beale. She is an international art authority and dealer, and she's very familiar. And this family business, Trinity House, was started by her cousin, so she'll be up to talk a little bit in the second part of the talk. And we will start out with Zach Hall. Now, Zach Hall is not just an art authority and art dealer. He's also an auctioneer. So we're going to talk about that later under an interview portion of our luncheon. So he can talk faster than anybody we know. And he also is a boater. He, in fact, rode stroke at John Carroll University in Cleveland. How many people knew there was a university in Cleveland? And so I rode on the lake myself, and it's a beautiful thing to do. And he's a rode stroke. So he will be up to give us a slide presentation. So just so you get the sort of map of things, we're going to start out with presentation about the nautical world of nautical art, marine art, and then we're going to have an interview of the artist himself, live from New Zealand, and then we'll do our interview portion. So let's kick things off with Zach Hall. Come on up, Zach.
Thank you, everybody. Very glad to be here. Always glad to be here in San Francisco. It's coming from New York right now where today it's a bit nicer, but we've been having a terrible winter. This is just beautiful. Just, again, want to thank everybody for those sentiments. We're honored to be here. This is a special occasion for us to present works by John Stephen Dews to everyone here in this setting, in this amazing place. Just real quick, I want to talk about Trinity House. Brief background. Trinity House Paintings was started in 2006 by Stephen Beale in the Cotswolds. Lovely Cotswolds were pictured here. And he is an authority on fine art, anything from 19th century to Impressionist, post-Impressionist paintings. Later in 2009, he expanded to London. So we're located in London, right off of on Maddox Street, right in Mayfair. And my colleague Simon Mills is heading up that gallery. So if you ever find yourself in London, please stop in and see Simon there. In 2011, Stephen then expanded to New York, which is where I took the lead. I'm the director of the New York Gallery. So again, also, if you're ever in New York and find yourself on the Upper East Side, please stop on by. We're on 64th and Madison. We like to say that we specialize in 19th century and Impressionist fine art, but we're really a bespoke service. We help people find and place and grow their collections wherever it may be. In particular, the works by John Stephen Dews, we consider that in a category of British sporting, and that's something that's very iconic to us, to our brand, and something that we really enjoy doing. So I just thought I would give a brief background on British marine art, and before talking to Stephen and talking about these examples, I thought I'd add a little bit of theatrics here and read a poem by William Wordsworth. That's me. There we go. Poem by William Wordsworth. And here we go. With ships and sea was sparkled far and nigh, like stars in heaven, and joyously it showed, some lying fast at anchor in the road, some veering up and down, one knew not why. A goodly vessel did I then espy, come like a giant from a heaven broad, and lustily along the bay she strode, her tackling rich and of peril high. The ship was not to me, nor I to her, yet I pursued her with a lover's look. This ship to all the rest did I prefer. When will she turn, and whither she will brook? Not tarrying where she comes, the wind must stir. On went she, and due north her journey took. So this is in 1806. There we go. And this is in 1806, and I believe Wordsworth is expressing through his writing the love of the sea and the ships that are its vessel for exploration. In particular, at the end of this poem, he's engrossed, he's bewitched by one particular ship that he's longing for and he loves. He pursued her with a lover's look. I think this passion, I can presume, is what guides many of you here today to the St. Francis Yacht Club. And it's that same passion that has guided many before you. So the British have a long history of maritime art. Paintings are another form of that expression, illustrating a passion for the sea. Maritime paintings can be traced to the Dutch in their golden age in the 17th century, as they relied heavily on the fishing and trade, the sea trade. The picture illustrated here is the only seascape Rembrandt created. It's titled "The Storm on the Sea of Galilee," painted in 1633. Sadly, this painting is very famous because it is lost. It was stolen. But nonetheless, it was in 1673 when Dutch painters William van de Velde, the elder, and his son began to visit England. And it was their influence capturing the sea and those amazing vessels that set the stage for the next centuries to come. In the later 19th century, it was individuals like Turner, with his interpretation of the heavens and the sea that took another path, one towards interpretation. This painting was created in 1838, and it is of a 98 gun ship, which played a major role in the Battle of Trafalgar. Then later in the 20th century, early 20th century, Stanthorpe Forbes established the Newland School of Social Realists. What that means is he brought the life and that action of the coast to the people, to the masses of England. Furthermore, national interest in maritime pictures began to grow as the might and the power of the Royal Navy grew, as their command of the oceans grew. Artists such as Thomas Summerscales and John Ward of Hall grew in great popularity and notoriety, each capturing elements of the ships they painted in a very majestic tone. This is a picture by Thomas Summerscales and another of John Ward of Hall, very famous picture. Also, Montague Dawson in the late 20th century began to see great notoriety and fame through his representation at Frost & Reed, a renowned 19th and 20th century art dealer. This picture we have here today is titled Red Jacket. It was painted in 1937. Titled Red Jacket on the Open Seas, painted in 1937. Red Jacket is one of the fastest ships ever built. It launched in November 1853. It was built in Maine by George Thomas. Her maiden voyage is among the most famous in the history of the clipper ships. In 1854, she left the port of New York, bound for Liverpool. She reached her port exactly 13 days, 1 hour, and 25 minutes later, breaking all records. And this picture, I love. I think it's a great example of Dawson and his skill and his style. Dawson is depicting the ship sailing with a stiff breeze at its back, cutting through an active sea, which this gives the artist the opportunity to stylistically enhance the interpretation of the vessel and the surrounding waters. So these three artists played a significant part in the inspiration and growth of John Stephen Dews. I like to say Stephen is a scholar, artist, and sailor. Stephen regularly creates a battle scene for us where he takes and spends painstaking time to research and create. An example we have available is the Battle of Copenhagen. In 1801, the British fleet strategically defended the Danish-Norwegian fleet anchored just off the coast of Copenhagen. The Brits were led by Horatio Nelson, a name we probably all know. The Bellona was a 74 gunship, which is painted in the left foreground. It is the level of detail which we are drawn to this picture. The vessels are accurately depicted in action with one another, also in action with the water and its movement, as well as the sweeping clouds in the sky. Stephen is exceptional in his ability to capture the moment. In Ranger close tacking Velshita off of Antigua, Stephen, which is pictured here, Stephen is depicting a famous Antigua classic yacht race in 2008, where those boats finished second and third, respectively. Velshita was built by Grossport for the Woolworths owner W.L. Stevenson in 1933, while Ranger belonged to Harold Vanderbilt. This picture captures the fluctuating water, the colors and tones of the water. The waves are turning over with light tone, if you can see in the foreground here, but soft rolling water with those deep blues showing really the depth of the ocean, all in contrast to those crashing waves on the side of the boat. again, all this in contrast and all this activity going on in this picture, it is the detail that I'm drawn to. I love looking at each of the individuals as they are participants in this race, as they become part of this vessel. Next, we have Crackerjack, the Swan Regatta off Herm. This is another fantastic, lively picture when Crackerjack, owned by Mr. Keith Miller, is closing in on the Eclipse, the other boat there, as they are sail for the mark off the course just off Herm in Guernsey. Again, you have that lovely active sea, those boats which are just fighting, and you really can picture that. The next picture we have is a preparatory sketch of HMS Centurion. At the outbreak of the war, of the Austrian succession in 1740, Commodore George Anson was sent to the Pacific with the squadron of 6 ships, his own being the Centurion, pictured here, a 60-gun ship. He was instructed to damage the Spanish interested in the Pacific during the time when Spain and England were competing for marine supremacy. As a student of art and the artistic process, I have a passion for works on paper. I love to see how an artist develops into a final product. Here, with delicate lines, Stephen is creating Centurion in the foreground, and with gentle shading, he creates depths in the sails as well as a competing ship in the background. I love that process. I love when you can take this a drawing and mirror it to a final product. So those are 3 of the pictures that we have here today. Actually 4, the do's and the 3, the Dawson and the 3 do's. But I'm going to lead to Karen here to finish up and talk about the 2 other pictures.
Great. Thank you, Zach. So as a special treat, after the luncheon, we all get to go over to a little gallery we have set up literally in the Ward Room where we have 6 paintings. You can literally go look at them. We have a gallery set up in the Ward Room. And this special announcement, 10% of all monies paid for any paintings will go to the St. Francis Junior Sailing Program. How about them apples? That's wonderful. Okay, come on up, Karen Beale.
Thank you. Yes, it's a really, unusual opportunity to see some things that hopefully relate to some of the boats that you've actually been on, some of the ships that you've sailed. And with that, I just want to talk a little bit about one of your own members, Tom Perkins, and the commission that he asked John Stephen Jews to do. And Stephen, when we pass to him, will talk a little bit more about the race that this was depicting. But this 138-foot schooner was obviously built back in 1917. It was built by Hershoff. And Tom Perkins, who was over in the other side of the Golden Gate Bridge there, where I live, over in Marin, he actually commissioned this painting to really depict his love of the Mariette before he sold the Mariette on. As those of you know, he went through a huge restoration of the Mariette in honor of his late wife, and it had special meaning to him. So he meticulously restored this schooner, and he'd originally bought it to sail over in the European racing circuit. And I'm delighted that you'll get to see this. It's in the wardroom, and the colours that are depicted here with the sea in the foreground there really makes it, I think, a special viewing. So it's gone on to win quite a number of prestigious races as well. And as I mentioned, Stephen will talk to you a little bit about that race in more detail in just a moment. And then the final painting that we wanted to talk a little bit about Stephen's work to you was one that he commissioned for the San Francisco Fine Art and Antique Show. So this was one that we displayed. I know a couple of people in the room here were at that show and saw this. And it's a really good example of his historical work because this is a painting that's depicting the young America as and I think some of you've guessed that over there. And we're passing around in the room, actually, a sketch of the young America. I'll just hold it up for the camera. Here it is. Do you want to put it on camera? Okay, so I'll just hold that up. This is a sketch of the young America, and as part of the artist's process, he's going through and sketching it out. That was the initial sketch that we got sent before the show. And then Stephen Dews will talk to you a little bit about how he painted this and where he painted it. He was actually combining his love of painting and sailing as he was going around the world when he painted this. So we were wondering from which port we would get this shipped to us. But what the painting is showing us there is an absolutely beautiful depiction of San Francisco in 1870. And can anybody recognize what's behind there, what we're showing? Yeah, Telegraph Hill. Yeah, that was without looking at the leaflet there. Telegraph Hill in the background there, and a typical fog lingering in the morning as Young America was preparing to set sail in 1870. And this could potentially have been one of those record-breaking journeys that Young America did, because in that, I think it was June of that year, she actually made a record-breaking voyage to New York in no less than 83 days, which back then was pretty good going. So that completes the overview of the paintings that we have here that take you through building on the words that Zach mentioned about the process that Stephen Dews goes through. And what I'm now going to do is switch over to Stephen himself. So if you just give me one moment, I'll get him up here on FaceTime. And Stephen, we hope that you're still there. There he is. So there you are. Whoa! The wonders of technology. He's over in New Zealand. So I'm going to hand back to Ron, who will now, manage this part. Thank you.
Wonderful, Stephen. Holy cow, we've been looking at your art here. It's great to be talking to you in New Zealand. What time is it there where you are?
It is now 9:52.
9:52 a.m.
In the morning, yeah, a.m. So I'm wide awake.
Thursday morning. Is New Zealand always ahead of America?
Well, the two aspects, I'm not going to really rub it in, but with the America's Cup, we'll move on from that and our time.
Was that not rubbing it in, Stephen?
Listen, I'm from Yorkshire. We always like to knock a nail in when we get the opportunity, which is not often.
I have one question before we get we're going to see a video of you in a moment. I want to ask on the yacht Young America painting that you did that depicts the yacht in 1870 before she leaves San Francisco. How did you get the inspiration and the idea? And then since there weren't really photographs, was that a photograph? Or there weren't many photographs then? Did somebody take a photograph that you painted from in that particular painting? And people here have got the brochure in front of them. They can look at it.
No, when I'm painting this type of painting, I do an awful lot of research to find out what does the ship look like, and I'll work from drawings. If there are photographs available, that's good, and I'll find out what local boats would have been around at the time, because at the end of the day, the painting has to tell a story. One of the clients I had in Australia came up with a phrase which I thought was rather delightful. When he bought a painting, he didn't just put it on the wall and look at it. He sat and watched it, which I thought was rather nice. So to try and get the feeling of what the artist was trying to portray. And obviously, Zach had mentioned Wordsworth. Well, what artists you probably appreciate do is try and tell a bit of a story. And so it isn't just a photographic flash in time. It actually has a time element to it. And so I try and pack all this lot into one painting. So all those little individual elements in the painting tell a story about what San Francisco was like at that time and capture a bit of the spirit of it. My main influences were Montague Dawson. That's how I started. Although, I mean, I sort of coincidentally, basically, I could say pick up the baton. It sounds like a rather pompous thing to say, but I don't mean it in that sense, of carrying on the art of portraying sailing ships. And Montague Dawson was my hero. Summer skills that Zach mentioned.
Is New Zealand going backwards?
Say again? Yes.
Just kidding.
Yes.
Just kidding. Go ahead. We
Okay,
just lost
well,
you for a second. Latency in the line. No problem. Keep going, please.
Okay, yeah. Well, Thomas Summerscales. If I ever get stuck with painting a particular technique, I go and see a Thomas Summerscales painting and look to see how he did it. John Ward, a great technical artist. I used to admire his work. He died exactly 100 years before I was born. Anyway, I'm just going to go back to the painting that we're discussing, the Young America. I'm a very keen sailor, and I think you have to obviously be able to sail to be able to paint properly. As I think probably most marine artists would agree with that. And at the moment, I'm sailing at sailed up from the east coast of America, and actually now the boat is actually now in Lunenburg. Winterized there. Now, when I painted the picture for the San Francisco Maritime Museum, for the Trinity House in San Francisco, I rented a small studio space in an office that was overlooking a wharf, and this wharf was very similar to the wharfs you used to get in San Francisco in the 1870s. And just by sheer coincidence, in came two sailing ships, the Picton Castle and another one called the Europa, and they're alongside this wharf. Anybody who knows what Lunenburg in Nova Scotia is like, it's very similar in many respects to San Francisco. The fog would roll in and out. We've got some beautiful light effects, and I'd have the very famous Blue Nose schooner sailing backwards and forwards, taking tourists, and the way the light would catch the rig of that schooner inspired me to paint that picture that you've got there in front of you. So that's where the inspiration came from, and the sort of the initial ideas, and then of course I'd start doing the research. And that's what we got with that.
So when did you start sailing? And we're speaking today with John Stephen Dews, maritime artist at the Wednesday Yachting Luncheon. And so, Stephen, one other question. Could you tell us, when did you start sailing? What age were you? And when did you start painting? What age were you?
Well, I was basically born and bred in the country. And so going to the coast was basically having a very rare chocolate. So I really relished it. If it was there all the time, I probably would be sick of chocolates. But anyway, I was taken for a sail by my uncle who was in the Royal Navy on a dragon. Which to me was one of the most beautiful yachts of its time, and probably arguably still is for its size. Very difficult to sail because they're quite, ergonomically not really designed for human beings, but they are so beautiful to look at. And that's what sort of triggered my real interest in the beauty of yachts, particularly class.
Dragons are great boats. They're very, very dry boat. Actually, sailing a dragon is akin to swimming. It's not quite as dry as swimming. And so, what age were you? What age was that first sail? What age did you dare onto a dragon first? What age?
Well, that was at the age of 5.
5. And what about painting? When did you pick up a brush?
Painting again was when, because I was probably like a lot of artists, not very clever with the academic studies, but I could draw. And I could draw myself out of trouble, and this is so I've just put the two together, and I had this cocktail that I've been developing and still developing even now.
What age did you first paint or draw? What did you start drawing?
I'd say around about 5. I think
same thing.
I do remember. I do remember painting pictures at school at the age of 5.
And so, when you've been painting, you're painting with oil. Have you tried acrylic? And what do you like about oil?
Acrylic is obviously a very, very quick medium, but oil gives you a bit of time to, oil paintings, it gives you a lot of time to, even though I put drying mediums in them, gives you a bit of time to manipulate the paint. And I feel that watercolors are pretty powerful, but I think oil paint actually, because you can get that impasto effect with oil, actually gives the painting a lot more power, and it really lends itself to painting the sea. So this is a medium I've stuck with. I didn't really start painting with oils until actually I'd left art college. I went to art college in Hull, and trained as an illustrator, more of a technical graphics illustrator, because technical stuff is something that I'm interested in. Technical, the way things work, and obviously a sailing ship is quite a complex machine, and so is a yacht. And you've got to have a fundamental understanding of actually how a yacht is rigged and how everything works on it. And this is where I probably take issue possibly with Montague Dawson. Quite often his rigging on many of his sailing ships was incorrect. If you take just an example, I think every single painting of a sailing ship, and probably the Red Jacket, if you look at it, would be probably similar. The spreaders at the trestle trees between the topmast and topgallant mast, he always painted them as if they were sticking out the side at right angles to the mast. Well, of course, if you did that, then as soon as the load came on, the rig would just break. Now, because Montague Dawson used to paint the essence and the spirit of the sea, as an artist, I forgive him that, because I think he gets what an artist does. He understands the spirit of painting. That's the difference between a painting and a photograph, and that's why I was appreciate. Though, and I think you actually have I understand John DeWitt with you today.
Jimmy DeWitt. Jimmy DeWitt.
Yeah.
Jimmy is more impressionistic. He's now become an impressionistic painter. He's actually a genius impressionistic painter. One more hand.
Well, yes, I'd agree with you.
Jimmy, come on up here. Would you mind for a second? Jimmy's kind of a shy boy. Those of us who know, you're going to get to see him in a minute here, Stephen. Those of us who know Jimmy's work have watched it evolve literally for half a century. And Jim is really one of the premier maritime painters in the world. Come on up, Jimmy. And those of us who sail with him know that he doesn't really shout. Over here, Jimmy, so I get you in the picture. To my left.
Hi, Jim. I do apologise for calling you John.
That's all right. I'm impressed Jim, you even knew who I was.
Yeah, no, Jim, I know your work, and the reason why I know your work is because we both use the language of art to portray our passion for the sea. And one of the things I admire about you, you've gone in a slightly different direction to me, but as I say, we have a commonality, is that you paint the feel of what it feels like to be on a boat or just looking at one from an artist's point of view. I may be wrong here, but this is what I get when I see your paintings.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I've been out there and gotten wet an awful lot.
So what's common to both of you is that you both know so much about sailing that those of us who look at your painting know you know about sailing. That's a wonderful thing. Jimmy's more impressionistic, but your detail, Stephen, I love that you pay attention to that. When you look at a piece, how long does it take you to paint, let's say Young America? How long did you work on that piece?
Well, this is going to sound like a very, very corny thing to say, but it actually takes 40 years to paint a picture like that. But it's actually true. In real time, it probably take me maybe a couple of months because there's a lot of research element in it. And I actually start off my canvases with an impressionist view because this is really what the essence of the painting is about. And I start off with probably looking at a painting from Jim's point of view. But I feel like I just need to put a bit more detail in because I'm probably a bit anal like that. I don't know. It's maybe the way I was brought up. I don't know.
You're a very, very patient man. I haven't got your patience. I couldn't do that. I got to get it done in a couple days.
Yeah.
That's the question, Jimmy. What's a typical time for one of your paintings?
Well, sometimes it takes longer for it to dry than it does for me to paint it.
Well, go ahead, Jim. It's great to talk to you.
Nice talking to you. I love your work. I love your patience, too.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you. The thing is that I wish I had Jim's impatience. Let's put it like that, because he gets a great feeling, and basically at the end of the day, he's pared down to its basic elements. Really, what I do. So Jim's way ahead of me with this one.
So, Stephen, we're going to show a video of you painting, and we'll be back for questions in just a moment. This is about a 10-minute video. Karen, if you'll come and cue it, please.
Yep. Thanks, Stephen. That was wonderful. We're just going to go and cue the video now to show Stephen painting in his craft. And I think This will be quite
Okay.
entertaining.
As we arrived in New Zealand this year, we first met Stephen Dews aboard
We
his
had
tractor.
sound.
He was launching his fast inflatable to help us film sailing shots of our favorite boat in the Bay of Islands. Pretty soon we realized that this was the Stephen Dews, the preeminent British mariner who film sailing shots of
Do you
our
want me to
favorite
shut
boat
Skype off?
in the Bay of Islands.
Hold on for a second. When I turn off the
Pretty soon
Skype,
we realized that
Tommy?
this was the Stephen Dews,
Do you want me to turn off, yeah?
the preeminent
So
British
Stephen will call you
maritime
back.
painter who's
I'm
been
going to call him
commissioned
off.
for paintings ranging from
Yeah, that's
modern America's cup regattas
Okay, there we go.
to historic scenes.
we're going to start over.
Hold on.
Full screen.
Yeah, I'm going. Okay.
Wonderful. Keep going.
Bear with us.
As we arrived in New Zealand this year, we first met Stephen Dews aboard his tractor. He was launching his fast inflatable to help us film sailing shots of our favorite boat in the Bay of Islands. Pretty soon we realized that this was the Stephen Dews, the preeminent British maritime painter who's been commissioned for paintings ranging from modern America's cup regattas to historic scenes from the tea trade in Hong Kong to Velshida racing on the Clyde. These days, Stephen's paintings have been taking him deep into historic naval battles, like the Battle of the Nile and the Battle of the Chesapeake. When he mentioned that he had a new painting underway in his studio, we dropped everything for a visit to a studio overlooking the Bay of Islands.
As you can see, where I'm living from a marine artist point of view is probably next door to paradise. I've got outside my studio this beautiful panoramic view of the Bay of Islands here, and not a day goes by where you just don't look at that in absolute awe. If I'm in my studio, I'm stuck on something, I think I can't quite figure it out. All I have to do is, how lucky am I, walk out sort of, because there's just got the shadow of the mast in here very roughly, and of course I'll put the shadow of the rigging that's on here as well. But you have to paint all that on before you put the actual rigging on, so you've got to have an idea in your head what is going to go on here. Because essentially, I suppose I've got to create a three-dimensional effect on what's essentially a two-dimensional surface, and there are tricks to do it. The first one obviously is perspective. Obviously things in the foreground are going to be bigger than the things in the background. Number two is the tonal value. Things are a lot darker in the foreground. It's the difference between that and that vessel. They're painted the same colour, in reality, what you call local colour, but to create this illusion of depth on the painting, you change the tonal values. And then there's colour temperature. Things in the distance have the warmth of the colour taken out of it because the air seems to filter it. So you actually put a little more blue in the paint to create that illusion of depth. Another one that we can use is actually in the things in the distance, slightly diffusing it. Because if one thing the eye can't see is detail all over the place. You only can see the detail of the thing you're actually looking at. And so the thing that's got to be really in sharp focus is the closest thing, probably the corner of that transom. And everything else will be slightly softened off until you've got this. It's going to be the sharpest part of the painting and possibly the end of this mizzen yard here. But what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to sketch in with my paint. To try and reduce the actual physical movement backwards and forwards, I'll put paint on my thumbnail here. I'll say I'm going to paint the forward shroud on this mizzen mast. It's already got a pencil line in there where it originally sketched it in, and then I'll paint down here. So that's now going to be my reference line for that. The same with this, again a reference line, because when I actually paint it in properly, a lot lighter, that will help give that extra bit of depth. Now my brushes tend to have gone a bit fluffy at the end. Because it's canvas, you tend to wear that, what I call the king hair, out very, very quickly. So what I do is I buy very cheap brushes, and it doesn't matter if I wear the end out. Well, actually I'm going to put a bit of white in this and soften this off. Put this on here now. Just line this up. Now, if I paint the next one here a lot darker, you'd see that that was actually in front of that one. But as I've got this grey on here, I'll do this one up here, and I'll just estimate that to be . This is a mile stick, which a lot of artists will use, obviously, and it's a very old-fashioned thing, and it's very, very useful. I can paint an extremely fine straight line. I'll just demonstrate here. If I've got a decent tip on this, I can paint a really, really fine line. Now, the beauty of using a mile stick is that when the ship's obviously got the load on the mast, on the rig, the leeward side shrouds and halyards, and especially if you've got a bit of wind in, they've got a certain catenary of the way the line comes out of the rig, and so you can actually put a curve on. But say we've got a halyard that's not under too much load, I can put a curve in this by rolling the mile stick away and then rolling it back. I don't know if you can see that, but that's got a curve in it, and because of the weight of the line, obviously the curve is going to be much more obvious as it comes down towards the deck. Now that's on the leeward side. As there's not much wind in this wouldn't actually happen, but I'm just demonstrating. But of course on the windward side, we've got a halyard coming up here, and there's load on it, of course. You can paint it straight. So I'll just paint this one, actually paint's drying up. It's very warm in here, and of course it dries the paint on the bristles quite. I'm using a fairly dark black paint in this, which I've well, in fact there isn't any black on any of my paintings. It may look black, but I construct the black out of two colours, essentially a brown and a blue. In this case it's cobalt blue and burnt sienna. One thing I think if you're going to paint marine paintings is that you've got to probably be a sailor at heart, because you've got to understand how these very complex machines work. You've got to have a feel for the sea. If you're constructing a painting and you think, well, I've got two ships approaching each other, you've got to make sure the wind direction is correct for both of them. Would they have those sails up for those sea conditions? Exactly what sort of point of sail are they sailing on? No shortcut. You've actually got to get it out there, get on a boat and feel how a sailboat works. And the other thing, of course, it's fun. That's the important thing. I enjoy it. It's I'm living in the best place on the planet, and I'm doing basically what I like. You know, how good is that?
Great art. Yeah. Cool stuff. Wow. Wonderful. Karen's now going to get Stephen back up on the Skype call, except it's not Skype branded. So we're back to New Zealand here. And so we are visiting today with John Stephen Dews, the Maritime artist.
Hi.
Hi there. And he could not do what he does were it not for Zach Hall and Karen Beale. Thank you all for being at a Wednesday Yachting Luncheon. And so, Stephen, give us a day in the life. You know, short description of a day in the life of the artist. What time do you get up? What time do you start painting? When are you most productive? And so on. Then I'm going to ask the same question of the people who do what they do so that you can do what you do. So first you, Stephen. A day in the life of Stephen Dews.
I'm sorry, Zach, I didn't get very much of that
A
question.
day
Could
in
you
the
just
life. Give us a day in the life. What time do you get up? What time do you go to work? What time do
Oh,
you...
see. Oh, so are they okay? The actual being an artist. Well, I'm fairly disciplined in that I start at round about 9 o'clock in the morning, but my actual peak efficiency time, you draw a graph of it, is actually the late afternoon and evening. And there are some times if I'm really get stuck into painting, and I have been known to actually work for a full 7 days without going to bed. I don't do that so often now, but I know in my early career that's quite often do. And even now, occasionally could work for a solid 24 hours. So it depends on exactly how wrapped up or how much pressure there is onto. Because at the end of the day, I'm fairly commercially minded. I am producing a painting, and it has to be produced for a particular time. That painting is produced for that time. So I honour agreements and contracts and whatever. So there is the commercial aspect of it, but at the end of the day, I am fairly disciplined, and I don't know. I think it's an old-fashioned work ethic. I think I enjoy what I'm doing. I'm probably what you call an unemployable person. I think most artists are. So I do the best I can with what I've got.
So when you're not doing one of these 7-day stints, what time do you usually retire? When do you go to sleep? You said you would start working at 9. What time do you call it a day?
So could you, I start working
What
at
time?
9. But
You started working at 9. What time do you usually retire? Go to sleep.
Oh, well, generally sort of in evening time, could be 9 o'clock in the evening. Obviously breaks for meals and what have you. And then this is when I'm working here. Because I have a studio here in New Zealand, but occasionally I do work when I'm sailing. I sometimes paint when I'm on my yacht. I have a schooner. As I say, it's in Nova Scotia at the moment, and I occasionally paint on that. But if it's a large painting, I've got a studio easel which I'll take ashore, and I'll rent or borrow or beg or whatever it is some studio space. I've got to say, most of the time, especially on the east coast of America and in Canada, I've always been generously offered studio space for free, which appeals to the Yorkshireman, and so I take full advantage of that. And again, I'll start. I'm fairly disciplined. I'll start at 9 o'clock in the morning. I'll work all day, and I'll go home in the evening. And we have a little classic yacht that we have on the schooner. I sometimes launch that and go for a bit of a sail around, just to keep my eye in, as it were.
Okay, you couldn't do what you do were it not for the people sitting on stage. Zach, what are your typical hours? What do you make? Phone calls? What do you do?
Well, my day, what I love about this job and what I do is every day it's varied. But typically I wake up very early. As you may know, being an old oarsman, your day starts at 4 in the morning. Well, not quite that early anymore, but still I'm up very early, and I like to go to work out in the morning, and right away when I wake up, I text Stephen, the gallery owner, and I get my rundown. Stephen, what's going on? What do I need to know? What pictures do we have in play? Where are we? What transpired in those 4 hours that he's been up and already ahead of the game? And we have that conversation while I'm working out. Sometimes he'll call and he'll say, "You're out of breath." Well, I'm on the treadmill. I'm running. But then I get into the office, and I'll go to the gallery, make sure everything looks smart, but it's a lot of client development, client relationships. You say that Stephen couldn't do his job without me. Obviously, I couldn't do my job without building client relationships and fostering that growth. So if it's going to have tea or breakfast with a client and going into their home and seeing their collection, doing that, taking a picture with me, placing it on their wall, talking to them again about their collection and where there might be gaps. I mean, that's what I love to do. And then my evenings are consumed. My wife and I, newly married, my wife and I love to go to the museums. So in this business, in this world, you have to stay up to date on this. And and seeing is knowledge, reading is knowledge, and so everything that I can see, I take a look at. I want to have eyes on it. If it's ancient Greek sculpture, I want to look at it. If it's contemporary Jackson Pollock, I want to see it. And so I spend my evenings and my days doing that as well. But like I said, it's client development, client relationships.
Karen, day in the life.
Very similar, but thank you. It's very similar to Zach, but now I realize I actually should be making my first call of the day to Zach, because he's already made the calls to England, and I'm starting making the calls to England 3 hours behind him. And we're probably both bothering the same people. But really staying ahead of what's happening in terms of the overall business that we have, what's available, what's going on, and then watching the market. I mean, for me, I'm less experienced than Zach is in the art world. So I'm constantly learning about what's happening in the markets as well. And so I definitely play off Zach's experience of the auction world and what's going on there, seeing what's happening around the world. The day, for example, that the Basquiat sold at 110 million was a great day for people like Banksy. You know, his art world also went up. His art value went up. We had access to some Banksys. That was a whole excitement that day. So lots of things like that we have to stay ahead of. And then speaking to clients, as Zach mentioned, and making sure that you're following up on everything that we have out there. And then in the afternoon and evenings, as Zach mentioned, there's so much going on. I'm here in the Bay Area, so spending a lot of time at exhibitions, other galleries, seeing what is out there, what's happening, spending a lot of time with the Legion of Honor. They really have a tremendous collection, as I'm sure you're all very aware of. So meeting up with people there and all of the museums in the city. And then also, we didn't mention, but we do tour a lot with exhibitions, and that's where we met John Harrington originally and some of you in the room. And there's a lot of work that goes into the exhibitions that you just wouldn't believe. We're just back from Palm Beach after 2 weeks, and I feel like my feet haven't touched the ground. So
we're going to zip through several real short questions. It takes him several months to do a painting. What's the close cycle on a sale, a typical sale?
It's varied. Again,
From what to what?
From minutes. Art is supposed to evoke an emotion. So if I've had clients come in and say, "I love it, I want it, let's do the deal, I want to buy it." Great. You know, or I've had clients who've said, "I like it, I want to see it on my wall. Give me 2 weeks to see it on my wall. I'll take it there. I'll put it up on the wall. Can I live with it for a couple days?" Sure, why not? Live with it. Don't tell Stephen. Don't tell the boss. But sure, live with it for a couple days. Tell me how much you like it. Then we'll get the process going. So it could either be minutes or a month.
So, Stephen, how often are you going sailing? And can you hear my voice now? How often are you getting away from the easel?
Yes, I can hear very well. Last year, we were away for 10 months. We sailed from Canary Islands via the Caribbean up to Lunenburg. And our plan for next year is to sail back down through Maine. On the way up, we actually stayed in called it Gloucester, and met a few artists that work in Cape May. Of course, it's Winslow Homer country, so it was great to see where he was inspired. And as I say, I met quite a few American marine artists. Then we actually went back down to Mystic because we were invited to the annual American Marine Artists conference there. And again, I met some of my all-time favorites, one of which is John Stobbart. He's getting on a bit now, but what a wonderful guy he is. Another guy, Christopher Blossom, another wonderful American artist. I really love his work. A lot more impressionistic than me, but again, all these people have one thing in common. They all sail, and they all understand the sea, and they paint the feel of what it's the sea's about. And as I say, that's why I mentioned Jim DeWitt's work. For me, is obviously a sailor, and he paints what he feels. And so I do a lot of sailing. Our plan eventually is to sail the schooner across the Pacific back here to New Zealand, but that's over maybe 10 years, and I'm 70 next year, so I'll just keep going along as I can keep pulling the ropes.
How long? What's the size of the schooner?
She's 74 feet. She's a composite construction built in the UK. The reason for going for a schooner, because I've got to say a lot of Europeans don't really get them. They think, well, why would you put two masts on when you can have one? Well, one, a schooner looks beautiful. All of them do. And I had to have part of the design brief, apart from the fact it had to be, schooners are easy to sail, apart from that, it had to have what they call row away factor. And if you know as well as I do, if you're rowing away from something, you look back and you're rowing away from, and I look back and I think, Jesus, that's a nice boat. And that's what I like about the schooner. When you're sailing, she's not as fastest boat on the planet, but who cares if you're enjoying it? You know, why do you want the journey to finish quickly? We have had a few races with it. As I said, we do all right. We actually had a race against the large schooner Columbia that was built down in Florida. She was up in Canada. We had a race against her. We did actually manage to beat her on a did not finish because she was a lot slower with a little wind than we were. But so I do enjoy the racing. But I liken a beautiful yacht to a speed machine that's very efficient to drinking wine out of a polystyrene cup, and the same wine out of a glass. Which one of them tastes the better? It's always the one in the glass. It's the same wine, but it's the way it's presented, and that's how I feel about sailing boats.
So what do you like most about your job? You got this job where you get to go sailing and you paint. What do you like most about it? And we need a short answer because I got time issues. And then I'm going to ask you what you like least. So first, what do you like most about your job / your life?
Sorry, I didn't catch that.
What do you like most about what you're doing for a living? What do you like most about it?
What do I like most about it?
Yeah. What's the biggest smiles you get?
What I like most about it is basically I'm doing exactly what I like, and I don't suppose there's very many people on the planet can actually say that. A lot of people go to work. No, it's probably not true, but I don't know. From my point of view, I enjoy every single second of every single day, and I just can't wait to get up in the morning, either get on with some painting or go do some sailing, and just basically living where I live or just traveling around as well. I'm just extremely lucky, and I'm so thankful to be alive.
So perhaps a tougher question: what do you like least?
What? Say again?
What do you like least about your life, your work?
What do I like to eat?
Besides, that's good too.
Sorry.
Aside from this interview, what do you like least? What do you don't like? Yeah.
No. I said, what I like least is not being here to hear very well. That's the But I think that goes with the grey hair. What I like the least is the little time I've probably got left. I think that's the thing that's the scary thing. I think I'm 70 next year, and I just feel I've got so much more I want to contribute, more I want to do, and that's the only thing I can say I like the least. And the usual sort of taxes and the usual paperwork and mundane stuff. But everybody has to sort of chew up that one every now and then. But the rest of it more than compensates. So yeah, there's not much I don't like about life at all, really.
So the same question quickly, Jack. What do you like least, and what do you like most? Short answers.
I like seeing the reaction of clients who love a painting. That it speaks volumes. I love that. What do I like least? Selling, and that's terrible to say, I guess. But I'm not a salesman. You're going to sell the picture to yourself, but if I can help get you there, show you the detail, share what I see as it might be different from what you see. That's what I like to do. That's where I am at.
If you have a question, hold your hand up. John will bring a mic. And Karen?
Yeah, bringing joy into people's homes. I mean, really seeing people sit and watch and admire a painting is really an amazing process. And what I like least is all the admin that goes along with any exhibition or show that we do. Okay.
Mm-hmm. So aside from boats and maritime items, Stephen, what else do you have an urge to paint, or what else do you paint? Do you paint anything else? Do you
Sorry, was that-
do you paint
sorry, was that-
do you paint anything beside maritime art? Do you secretly, when we're not looking, paint flowers and puppy dogs?
Actually, I like to paint anything really. I mean, I look at. I've had quite often do life painting. I'll paint the scenery where I am occasionally, but at the end of the day, they're just I would say exercises. They're basically, I suppose, yes, I'd say they're exercises, keeping my hand-eye coordination going and enjoying really where I am. But at the end of the day, my real passion is painting the sea and painting anything that floats on it. And it could be, I mean, I have painted in the past oil rigs, tugs, fishing boats. It doesn't always have to be sailing, as long as it's on the sea and it's actually that interaction between the sea and the vessel of where it's going. And that's what inspires. So it doesn't actually always have to be sailing. Is my passion, but I will paint anything that floats, basically.
Wonderful. And before we go look at your art next door in the gallery, I'd like to say our speaker today has been John Stephen Dews, maritime artist, live from New Zealand, and he's represented stateside in New York by Zach Hall and San Francisco by Karen Beale. Thank all of you for joining us at a Wednesday Yachting Luncheon. And with that, the luncheon is adjourned.
Thank you.
Good on you. Thank you. Was that fun or what? Was that fun?